Welcome to One Life Truth Love. This is the Mechanics of Life series, and it's for genuine aspirants to truly know thyself and live in embodied oneness, which is tangible fulfillment and the peace that passeth all understanding. This isn't for anyone who's not willing to look and see everything differently, because seeing truly, seeing aright, changes everything gloriously and answers the highest calling definitively, but requires absoluteness. This is the second video in our series, and you'll find articles that go deeper on each of our topics on the website, onelifetruithlove.com. So let's now look at the mistaken assumption that runs the life of all those who never question it, and is not only the single source of all suffering, lack, limitation, and wanting, but the illusory veil that keeps genuine fulfillment, happiness, and satisfaction out of sight, and in fact, entirely elusive. So let's explore this. You wouldn't drive a car without understanding how it works. You certainly wouldn't perform surgery without knowing anatomy. You wouldn't and couldn't build a bridge without understanding physics. But somehow you're expected to live and live your entire life without understanding how it works, how consciousness works. And that's the problem. Every crisis you experience, personal or global, stems from operating with the wrong manual. You've been given instructions for a system that doesn't exist. And you're not only wondering why nothing works, you accept and experience problems as if they're actually normal. And they're not. So let's look at the manual you were given. From the moment you were born, you were taught an operating manual for life. You were taught that you are a separate individual, a body, a mind, a person with a name, a history, a personality. You don't question this. You were taught that you're born, that you live, and that you'll die, that you need to survive, compete, get, accumulate, protect yourself. You were taught that happiness comes from external things, success, relationships, money, achievement, the approval and acceptance of others. You were taught that you're separate from others, separate from the world, separate from God. And you were taught that if you work hard enough, think positively enough, believe the right things strongly enough, you can make your life work quite well. This is the manual you were given, and it doesn't work. You don't need me to tell you that. It doesn't line up with the promise of permanent peace that you really desire. And after a lifetime of experience, you probably even doubt that that's even possible anymore. But the operating manual you've been living by without question doesn't work because it's based on a false premise, a mere mistake, the OG root cause issue behind every appearance of upset and suffering there can ever seem to be, bar none. And that simple erroneous mistake, the false premise you operate from, is that you are separate, that you are a separate self in a material world, trying to survive and find happiness. But that's not how consciousness works. That's not the mechanics of life. So let's look at why the manual you've been living with and living by without question fails every single time. If you are a separate self, then you're inherently incomplete. You're always lacking something that you need to find or get somewhere sometime, hopefully. And you need to get it from outside yourself. You seek love, money, success, validation, peace. The list goes on. But no matter how much you get, no matter how much exhausting effort you make, it's never enough. The gain might produce a temporary high, but it's never true, complete, definitive fulfillment, is it? You already know this because you're off on your next project, never satisfied. There's always more to do. Why is that? Because the premise is wrong. The foundation you're operating from is wrong, like a mistake in a maths equation. You're not a separate self that lacks something. You're infinite consciousness, expressing as this unique individuality. You already are whole, complete, perfect, lacking nothing. But because you believe and never question the single false premise, because you identify as a separate person, you experience lack, you experience fear, you experience the need to protect, defend, get, accumulate, like a squirrel trying to survive the winter. And this creates suffering. And this is the only thing that produces an appearance of suffering, the experience of suffering, and nothing else can, because suffering isn't real. Not because life is hard, but because you're operating in opposition to how life actually works. It's like trying to use a Windows manual to operate a Mac. The instructions don't match the system, so it doesn't work. And you blame yourself. The most educated and successful always do. You think you're doing it wrong. You think you need to try harder, be better, fix yourself. You really believe it's your responsibility to make the world better and to be part of the solution. But the problem isn't you. The problem isn't even the world. It never has been. The problem is the context, the false, mistaken premise you're operating from. And context correction is the answer. And it's immediate, not gradual. So what's the right manual that actually aligns precisely with how life works? Well, here it is. There is only God, which is infinite, omnipresent, simultaneous source, supply, substance, and activity, consciousness. Not God as a separate otherworldly being somewhere else, but God is the only reality, the only substance, the only life, the only intelligence. And you're not separate from God. You're not separate from consciousness. You're not separate from life. You are life, expressing as this unique individuality, not you as a person, not you as an assumed physical, independently existing body, because that's an illusion, but you as infinite consciousness itself, as all. This is the mechanics of life. And when you recognize this, when you see that you are not a separate self, but infinite consciousness, everything changes. Not because your circumstances change, but because your experience of the circumstances change because you identify rightly. You're no longer operating from lack, fear, seeking, searching, accumulating, evolving, incompleteness. You're operating from wholeness, from sufficiency, infinite supply. You're no longer trying to get something from outside yourself. You're recognizing what you already are. More like a revealing or an unleashing. And this is the difference between suffering and freedom, between seeking and recognition, between the false manual and the true one. So why don't we take a moment now to look and see what actually is with a simple, direct, verifiable recognition right now in this moment. Are you aware? Yes, undeniably, undoubtedly. Now ask yourself, What is this awareness? Is it something you possess? Is it separate from you? Can it be divided from you? Or is it what you are? Notice that you don't have to create awareness. You don't have to achieve it. It's already present. It's not something you earned or make or create. It's not something you can lose. It's simply what is. And this awareness, this undeniable fact of your existence, is not limited. It's not confined to what you call your body. It's not produced by your brain or bound up in some tiny gland in your brain stem. What you call your body appears within this awareness. Your thoughts appear within it. The entire world appears within it. And this awareness is infinite. It has no boundaries, no beginning, no end. This is what you are, not as a concept, not as a belief, but as immediate, undeniable, present fact. And when you realize, acknowledge, and embody this fact, when you see that you are infinite consciousness, not a separate person, because that doesn't exist, the entire operating manual changes. You're no longer trying to survive. You're no longer trying at all, actually. You're recognizing you are life itself. You're no longer seeking happiness. You're recognizing your infinite wholeness. You're no longer trying to become something. You're recognizing what you already are. This is the correct manual. This is living in alignment with the mechanics of life, guaranteeing fulfillment. So if you want the full mechanics, the complete operating manual for how consciousness works, you'll find it. It's not hidden. There's a book called The Mechanics of Life. It's available on Amazon and at onelifetruithlove.com. And this book shows you step by step how life actually operates, the obvious facts of reality few ever see, not as theory, not as philosophy, but as something you can verify, the verifiable mechanics that you're invited to establish for yourself. And if you want to enjoy live guidance, you want to immerse yourself in this recognition with expert support, join the One Life Truth Love immersion program. You'll find details at the website. And you can explore those chapters far more deeply in the mechanics of life, which shows you and walks you through the foundations, shows you how to live from this recognition. And next Tuesday in our live video, we're going to look at the next lesson, Only God Knows, and how that single premise changes everything. Subscribe, watch, recognize for yourself so that you can live the peace that passeth all understanding, so that you can live from overflowing fulfillment, because that's reality. That's normal life. That's your life now.